Were you recording
Yeah,
the last one?
yeah, I was recording the last one, but
Really?
I
Okay.
didn't upload that because it was quite a big file. But yes, thanks for joining us, Justin. I really appreciate your time.
No, thank you.
Justin, if you don't know, is an amazing photographer. He also is the digital creative behind a lot of what you see from the Hillsong Africa Foundation. Yeah, so I'm just gonna, I've got a couple of questions that I've sent Justin. I'm gonna ask him those, but if you have any questions you'd like to ask him during the chat, just stick your thumb up and then we can go from there. But yeah, so Justin, I just want to ask you first, if you can tell us who you are, what makes you tick as a creative?
Hmm. Yeah, sure,
I mean,
definitely. But
those
it's
tricky
one of those like
questions.
you can answer a lot of like technical photography questions and theological questions, and someone asks, tell us about you, and you're like, I don't
Yeah.
know how to answer that. But yeah, no, thank you first of all, Tarren, for the opportunity. Like it's, I love the concept behind what you're trying to do in the initiative, and yeah, just like getting creatives talking and still building community even in this time. And I think it's a really cool idea, and I'm glad someone's driving it. So well done to you, and thank you again for the opportunity. Like, yeah, I don't take these things lightly, and it's humbling to get asked to share whatever in whatever capacity, whatever experience and thoughts you ever run things. So, yeah, thanks, man.
Thank you.
Sorry if I'm looking slightly off camera. I have my camera on the side and my laptop here, so I can see you. So that's why my eyes line might be off. But like Stefan was saying, people are starved of eye contact, so I'll try and like look that way as much as possible to look you guys in the eye. But yeah, to give you like, geez, where do you start? Like I've been a photographer for probably as long as I can remember. I enjoy the visual arts as a whole, and that extends to like filmmaking and graphic design and web design and social media, like everything that encompasses all the creative fields. Photography I'm probably drawn to more than most, or the field that I enjoy the most. But yeah, man, like I have the privilege of being able to work in it. I haven't always been working full time in it, and I think that's the story of a lot of creatives, where you kind of side hustle it for a long time. And I did that for plenty of years. I used to work as a IT technician when I first started, doing like CCTV camera installations and setting up servers and things like that. So not even really related to creativity at all. And yeah, from there went on to like still managing IT or working in administration all along while still building a side business and getting better at photography and doing side jobs. And yeah, that was always like my side hustle. And then eventually for a while did it full time, by the grace of God, because I sometimes don't even know how I did that. And then, yeah, eventually found my way into Hillsong Africa Foundation. And even that was a journey of volunteering at church for about eight years. Yeah, 7, 8 years. And yeah, like that always, like I'll be very open, but that always playing a very vital role in the creative that I am becoming and will be, just because our church and the environment and the people and the heart behind it it has yeah, just it cultivates what we do in such an amazing way, and it's definitely done that in my life. And yeah, and I'm super thankful for that. So that's definitely made me, when you ask what makes me tick, I think that played a big part in what kind of makes me tick, because as much as I love photography and I love the visual aspect of it and great lighting and great composition and stuff, I think the heart behind it is something that is even more my drive, or even more why I enjoy it, because I firmly believe it's something God calls us to use and to use for Him. And church has been a massive part in yeah, helping me discover that and kind of helping me find that journey. So I think, yeah, I would say what makes me tick as a creative is kind of, yeah, the motive behind why we do what we do, because I think that extends into what you create is the heart that you have behind it first. And it's important to get that right before we work on how good we become with our camera or how good we get at editing or anything. It's just understand your why. And we've heard that so many times in things of
Yeah.
just like know your why. And I think, yeah, for me, that's probably what makes me tick the most, is just that I'm doing this for God and I know He's doing it with me, and that's what makes it enjoyable, and that's what makes it something that outlasts me even, yeah, whatever the creative or my career looks like in the future. Hope that answers it. Yeah, to give you like generalization, I am 32 years
It
old,
answers it
married
pretty
to a
well.
beautiful wife.
I mean, that's a very tricky question in
Yeah.
general. So like the one thing I'll say is that I don't know you that well, uh, but a lot of people have said that I've spoken to, and from what I've noticed is that you're always willing to impart the knowledge that you have and the wisdom that you've gained to others, which is why I think it's the heart behind your blog that you have on your website, Light in the
Yeah.
Lens. So I don't know if you can tell us a little about Light in the Lens and what
Yeah.
that's.
No, thank you. That's a bit of a shameless plug for me, just to get some free exposure for it. But thank you for asking. But yeah, it's like the Light in the Lens is a blog. I probably, and actually, to be honest, originally it wasn't something that I wanted to be a blog. It was gonna be a book that I thought I might write, or I wasn't exactly sure what the output would look like. But it was something that I've wanted to do for years already, like probably 3-4 years ago, that I just thought like I've learned so much as a creative, and more so as a kingdom creative or as a Christian creative, and I just feel like there was so much that God had taught me that I wanted to share. And because, like I mentioned earlier, I'm just really passionate about the heart behind why we do what we do, because I think it is more vital than how we execute our craft. And that was what I wanted to do with the blog. And I mean, it's definitely not done. It's probably something that will keep growing and keep it adapting as there's always new things to learn. But yeah, it was just more meant to share the purpose behind photography, like, or just visual communication and visual arts. Like, why do we do it? How does God expect us to use it? Because I think it's probably one of the most powerful communication means that we have today. Like, it's all around us. You open up your phone, whatever app, and there's photography looking at you. Like, it's everywhere. So I think more so even in this time, it's so important for us to learn how to use it and to use it well, because it can be used to the detriment of a lot of people. But on the other side, it can be used for a lot of positive results. And I think that's what I wanted to do with the blog and with my voice in it, was just to be able to encourage other people in similar spheres of just like, this is something God has put in your hand. It's a seed. You enjoy it for a reason. You're good at it for a reason. And yeah, he wants you to use that. He has called you to use that. It's your form of worship to him. And that's what I wanted to help people understand, and just be able to walk freely in and feel like, yeah, God's got their back when it comes to their creative fields, whatever that may look like. And I hope it does that. I know it's geared a lot towards photographers because I am one, but I think a lot of it still applies to whether you're a 3D designer or like Shannon is an animator, or like there's so many different fields of motion graphics and things like that. And I think, yeah, within all those things, God is there, and yeah, he has something to say to you about it, and something to say through you using it, and that's what the blog was meant to be about. And yeah, if you ever have the time, please check it out. Let me know what you think, and like, I'm always open to suggestions and learning more, because yeah, it's a collaborative thing. I think there's a lot of creatives out there with especially even within this Zoom panel and within our church creative team. Like, there's a lot of amazing people with such great insights to things, and it would be great to like, yeah, start a discourse over it and yeah, just learn more.
Okay, this one is specific to the times that we're in, right? How's like the lockdown affected you creatively, the creative process? What you do? I mean, I know you've been quite busy. You do work for HAF, but also I know that you do still do photos for friends and family. You shot Stephen Christian's wedding in Somerset West.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Like, has the lockdown slowed you down in terms of any of the projects that you might have been working on beforehand, thinking about how you approach things differently going forward, thinking about the future? I don't know if you can speak to that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure like any other creative, your projects and things that you wanted to do got put on hold in this season. And I think there's positive and negatives to it. There's definitely, and I mean, my heart really goes out to photographers, and especially people who do anything like this full time, because we all know that completely dried up and stopped due to the limitations that we now live in. And I know it must be like, it's seriously difficult, and it has a genuine area of concern. But I think there's positive and negatives to that. And the same for me. I had freelance shoots that I would still do on the side that all had to be either cancelled or postponed to next year or whenever, like no one can really say for certain. And there's been positive and negatives to that. Like on one hand, yes, work dried up, or there was less to be able to do, or less to be able to shoot. But on the other hand, I was able to accomplish things that I wouldn't have necessarily had the time to, like the blog being an instance, or just honing my editing style, or getting better at doing other things. So there's pros and cons to it. It's all like, it's in how you choose to use it, or how you choose to perceive the time that you're in right now. But yeah, for me, like, as always, as a Christian, your faith is in God, and you trust that He's your provider, not your skill or your ability to shoot or to earn an income. Like, we understand that's not our source. But yeah, on the other hand, there's also a practicality to it, where there are certain things you can do right now in lockdown that doesn't have to be restricted just because you're stuck within four walls. And I think especially within the field of photography, there's a lot that we can keep learning. Like, we have access to online learning material that we necessarily wouldn't have had, or that we don't necessarily make use of just because we're so busy, and we're always like out there shooting, or we're doing other things. And I think now we can actually sit down and learn new skills and get better in other areas that are within the photography sphere that we don't necessarily give our time to. So for me, that's definitely how I've chosen to embrace the lockdown period, and just this kind of forced slowdown, is to get better at other things that I didn't necessarily give a lot of attention. So like things like understanding color theory a lot better. How do certain colors relate to each other? How do they gel better when it comes to your photography, or when it comes to grading in video? Like those are things that we don't necessarily always learn when we're a photographer. We learn about shutter speed, aperture, ISO, like the basics, just to understand how a camera works. But there's much more to it that actually makes you a better photographer than just understanding those three areas of a physical camera. There's, like getting better at what's the rule of thirds in composition, and then how do you break that? Like, rules are there, but they're also meant to be creatively broken. So things like that you would just expand your knowledge on. And I think for me, that's definitely how I've chosen to embrace the lockdown and this current time, and I would encourage other people to do as well. Just to, there's ways to get better at what you do without needing to feel like you have to be out there to be able to shoot. And of course, I understand there's technicalities and logistics that go into all of that, but make it work with the way that you can. And that's like, you were touching on being able to shoot a wedding in lockdown. Like, I did do that very selectively. Like, Stephanie is a very, very good friend and colleague, and Christian is an amazing guy that I got to know a lot better over the process of them getting married. So I really, Natasha and myself really wanted to do it for them, because we felt God put it on our hearts that we wanted to. Otherwise, I would encourage people to be socially distant and safe as much as possible. Like, a lockdown wedding is a very significant, and it's a beautiful moment. Like, marriage is something that extends beyond just COVID and lockdown. So it was great to be part of it. But obviously, like, we wanted to be wise and make sure we don't do it very often, or don't put ourselves and other people in that position very often. So this one was an exception, and I'm glad I got to do it. And there's challenges that come with that. Like, a lockdown wedding seems so much more simpler. It seems like there's less guests, there's less to the timeline, like there's just less things that happen. And it seems that way, but it's actually, I found it to be more challenging than a normal wedding. And I guess that's because you get used to the way something gets done. And then when it changes completely, you have to adapt, and you have to figure out, okay, how do I make this look good creatively? Like, how do I still tell the story of this day for this couple, and what's happening and unfolding, while still keeping my mask on and sanitizing, or it's hard to do all of those things. So lockdown photography it's interesting in the way the landscape is changing now, and the way we need to do things. And I can only imagine, as we roll the levels of lockdown out more, and it becomes more possible to do these things, and whether you're doing a family shoot or a portraiture or whatever, like, it's it's interesting, because you're gonna have to adhere to these rules, yet still be able to take a
lenses.
Yeah, like super zoom, 400 mil, just stand at the back and then zoom into your subject. So it's interesting in the way things are going to change, and it definitely, that's why I would encourage that we get better at our skill and hone what we can while we're in this time, because you're going to need to draw on that in a new way when the world goes a little bit back to normal. And yeah, that we were able to shoot again and be able to do like, yeah, just normal shoots or bigger scale shoots. Definitely, I think a lockdown wedding was a privilege to be a part of. It was quite interesting. And then maybe like, I guess with half my creative process and approach to that is a lot different. It's two very different worlds compared to being a freelance photographer and then a communications oversight, especially with half, like, because what we do, and for those who don't know or might not necessarily understand church context, but Hillsong Africa Foundation is the community outreach part of church. It's the community development part of church. So we kind of address the physical needs that exist within our nation, and that's what Pastor Phil Lucinda's heart was when establishing it, was that we practically make a difference for people. Like, it's great to be able to build community and to preach the word and to have, you know, a church set up, but they also understood that you kind of got to meet people where they're at and the various needs that South Africa has. Yeah, it took an entire division or department to be able to address those things and to do that full time. So we get the privilege of outworking that on a day-to-day basis. And that had to radically change in lockdown. Like, we had to repivot the entire way that we do things, because now what we did before doesn't necessarily work anymore.
Of 2020.
It is. If you need to sum up 2020 in one word, yeah, it's 2020. Yeah.
Like touching on that.
Yeah,
I wanted to ask you, you're capturing the realities of what people are facing in the various communities in South Africa through your work for HAF. And that can be like, it's a bit of a daunting thing, because if you think about it, in journalism, it's a big, and documentary photography, it's a big debate, right? How do you capture the pain and the injustice that is happening in the world, right? And the struggles people are going through, but then also give those people dignity when you're capturing the media? Because obviously we want to show people in church, this is what's happening, this is what you're giving towards, this is what we're all contributing towards. But at the same time, we want to do it in a way that, you know, gives the people that are being taken photographed dignity, right? So like, how do you like go about working and thinking about that in your process? I mean, thinking of this about this question, I've also started thinking about how does this happen when we take pictures of people coming into our church doors when we eventually come back on a Sunday? How do we think about, how does the creative expression of our photography team change now during the season? So I don't know, have you thought about that? Is that something that you're conscious of working on?
It's a big question, and you put it really well. And that's probably the biggest chunk of my role in a organization like the Hillsong Africa Foundation, is that we need to always honor the people that we are serving, as well as those that are serving with us, or the volunteers, or the people that make what we do possible. So that's always definitely on my mind with every social media post, with every piece of copywriting that gets done, or every photograph, or every video that we make, or even a web slide, whatever our outputs look like. We've always got to have that behind, and not just because of what we do as a foundation, but because of, as a fellow believer, like, we know there's intrinsic value on every person that God has put there, and you want to honor that, and you want to do that well in the things that you create. So it's always, it's a burden at times, because you've got so many varied opinions and so many different ways that people can perceive things. And you've kind of got to be sensitive to that. And I will be the first to admit that I've made many mistakes in my journey of understanding this, and maybe not utilizing my skill or photography or tools in the best way. And you learn, that's fine. There's grace. You learn about that, and you get better at it. But yeah, like, it's like you mentioned, it's definitely a sensitive subject, and it's actually being discussed a lot more now in this time that we're facing a worldwide pandemic than any other time. Especially because of the way certain nations or cultures get portrayed on camera, or like, it's interesting in the way how documentary photography has kind of stigmatized people and just labeled them in certain ways, and we don't want to do that. But yeah, just like, I guess some thoughts in the way I handle it is just first understanding what it means when you need to dignify someone, or when you need to what it means when you're placing value on them. And it's important to realize that we first need to take the camera out of the way and understand that our photography doesn't have the power to give or take dignity away. It's not that powerful of a tool. Like, that the very fact that person lives and breathes and has life in them is the fact that that already validates them. That's already, they're made in the image of God, and the fact that they are born in this world, that gives them value. They're made in God's image, and that full stop makes them a valuable person. So it's not whether we take a photo of them or whether we don't that decides their value. So I think we first need to understand that as a creative, that we don't have that kind of voice when it comes to producing, because obviously there's ways that we can portray that dignifies people or doesn't. So that's not to say that you can be loose and do whatever you want and shoot the way you want to. But I think it's important just to understand what real value is first, and kind of takes the pressure off of us realizing, okay, it's not really on me to be able to dignify someone. But then, having said that, there is real pain and there's real struggle out there. There's real social injustices that exist. And we also need to kind of like grapple with the fact that pain is a part of humanity. It's a part of our existence. Pain and struggle is there. It's not something necessarily that goes away instantaneously. And the Bible, as our greatest example, is proof of that. Like, it's full of stories of broken people that were still used by God, whether that's David and committing adultery, or Abraham and his unbelief, or the Apostle Paul, who literally threw Christians into prison and created martyrs almost to eventually become one himself. Like, the Bible is full of stories like that of people's brokenness. So it's okay. Like, we need to acknowledge the fact that that's there and it's part of the human story, and that's what makes it okay for us as photographers to capture that. It's real. It needs to be documented almost. It needs to be told. Like, it needs to be made something that people are made aware of. So it's almost like a mandate and a responsibility that we have as storytellers to be able to shed light on things that exist. So I think understanding those things are just of what real value is, and that pain is okay, and that it's normal. Like, not normal in the sense that it's something that we want to happen, but normal in the sense that it does exist, and that it is a reality for a lot of people, and we need to acknowledge that. But then that's maybe just broader scope, but in some practicalities in the way that I would handle those kind of sensitive subjects or sensitive images is just that you've always got to see the person before you lift the camera. And I've trying to train myself to do this when I am out in the field and shooting something, even more so now in this lockdown, where I've had the privilege every now and again to go out and document what our team does. And you see some really harsh struggles, and as a photographer, your instinct is, I need to capture this because this might be a good image for social media to be able to get people to understand and be able to help more. But it's important to like kind of pause for a moment and first see the person, first talk to them, first hear their story and listen to where they're at before you decide to take a shot. And maybe out of that, it's better that it then happens out of a relationship where you discuss it with them, you ask permission, and you kind of like just first build that common ground before you just capture something. And I know that's difficult. That can't always happen, especially in the documentary photography where you're kind of shooting something as it's happening. But as much as you can, I think it's important to see the person first. And like, I think I don't want to sort of repeat a lot of the things that I've probably written about for someone that has like read it before, but I also think like it's important to learn how to tell a story, or how to capture pain specifically in a way that doesn't reveal identity. And I think that's probably more the art of documentary photography than any other part of it, is that you're able to use obscurity, you're able to use creative angles and the right depth of field to be able to tell a story without necessarily showing the person. You can show pain and you can show struggle, and you can show injustices without revealing who the subject is, or without revealing the person necessarily. And you can use shadow and silhouettes and all these cool techniques that we've seen before used in art, but you can use that to be able to show
like
just the
using
harsh
the
reality
technique
that
to elevate the story that you're trying to tell.
Exactly. So I think that's something that I've learned to become more aware of and get better at, and something I want to learn more is just be able to almost invoke the imagination of the viewer of like what could be going on there, and that spurring them to action more than just saying, here's a face to someone who's struggling, help them. Like that doesn't always translate well. So I think getting creative in the way that we capture stories is really important. And this is some of the things in the way I would process a creative brief or just project for something like what we do at Have.
Okay. I mean, and you're doing a great job, because it never feels, when it's it's funny when you look at like maybe like a charity or something like that, and it's not like a diss or anything like that, but if you look at some nonprofit organizations, sometimes it comes across a little too like they're trying to play on. It doesn't come across as authentic. It doesn't come across as a natural story or project, like something that they're trying to do to get people to. It's just something that we want you to follow our cause, and that's it. But it doesn't come across like that when we were looking at the Hillsong Africa Foundation social media. But talking about this, I wanted to I wanted to ask, and if anybody else has any questions, please say shout out. I think we only have Chad today, and sorry, I don't know what is Jay Bueta. I don't know what your first name is. Is it Jock? Is it? If you have any questions,
yes,
is it
Jock? No, Jock.
Just shout out if you have any questions. But I wanted to ask Justin, do you think? I mean, in most industries, creativity, not even just in the creative field, but I think in every industry, things are changing for better or for worse. Companies are doing things differently. Do you think creative expression, the way photographers, videographers, in their field, do you think that things are changing, or do you see that there's going to be a big shift once we come back from lockdown? You already see it happening with some of the people that you know already. Like, what do you think is going to be happening in the near future? I mean, you don't know the future, but I mean, your thoughts.
Yeah, it's asking me to predict what's going to happen. No, but yeah, that's a really good and a really deep question. Obviously, like, I don't know is the first answer, just because like it's that's in God's hands, and what happens. But yeah, I guess you can read the signs and see how creative expression is changing, and we can already see the trend of what's happening in just the world as a whole, in the media, and how the news is portrayed to people. So it's a tough question. I think there's, again, like I mentioned earlier, there's positive and there's negatives to the way things are changing. I guess what I would consider a negative is that it's the lockdown and the limitations, and what we now have to deal with in terms of distancing from one another is, I think it's almost weeding out people who never necessarily took this industry seriously, if that's the right way to put it. Kind of people who wanted to dabble in photography or visual art, who wanted to like get a feel for it. And I think a negative is that it's kind of pushing them out, because now people have to really just get practical, but I can't necessarily give time to a hobby anymore. I need to do something that's going to help me survive. So that's totally valid and totally understandable. And I think a negative impact of this is that it's kind of like just almost killing people's ability to explore a bit, and kind of just making them think more real. So that's a sad negative that I think is happening. Just a sad, repercussion, or just a sad implication of what's happening because of the changes in creative expression, which it's not great to see. Like, people should have the freedom to be able to explore different talents and grow in those kind of things. But then, there's definitely positives to it as well. I think for those who do come out of this and still pursue photography as a career or as a sideline passion, is that it's almost going to become an even greater celebration of what's good in the world. I think photography is a tool that really shows that and really celebrates all the good things in the world, whether that's landscapes or nature, or whether that's people and their stories and their ability to be, just beacons of light in their communities and in their spheres, and be able to tell that story. I think photography is going to become an even stronger connection tool to people, where it's the benefit of this slowdown is almost that more people did just that. They slowed down and they connected again, whether that was through messaging and video calls or social media. Like, more people are aware of it again. It's almost like the engagement levels went back up, because at one point we were going so fast in the rat race that we kind of lived past each other. And I think in creative expression and in the creative industry and in photography, that's kind of getting restored a little bit more, where people are just understanding their sense of one another again, in the sense of togetherness. And I think that's going to be really powerful for a creative to be able to be part of all of that and be able to show that the world is still good and there's still things to celebrate and still things to be happy about, and we get to capture that, so I think that's something that's probably going to get even better and even stronger as we come out of this, and just as the world goes to what its new normal is going to become.
It's profound. And
yeah,
so
pretty vague, but yeah, difficult question.
It helps. We have a question from Ibi. He's saying, what do you say to an ambitious creator with minimum resources in terms of gear? And a side question, you've changed your color grade lately to a more cinematic look. How do you choose your color palettes for your photos?
Great questions, Ibi. Yeah, Ibi is also, he started his YouTube channel recently, which is very, very cool. I recommend you check it out.
Everybody go follow Ibi's channel, yeah.
But yeah, good questions, bro. And like, that's probably the biggest, the most common question you get asked is like, when it comes to starting out in gear and what do you start with? Obviously, like I can't give you a camera model specifically because it all depends on budget range and things like that. But I am a firm believer that it is not about the gear. And I know you'll hear people say that all the time. And it's probably like, there's truth to the fact that a great camera produces great results. Like that is just a technical given. Like we know that, we know sensors get better, we know megapixels go higher, but you can do it with minimum resource, like you're asking, especially when you're starting out. And you can do that with a phone. I've done shoots with a phone. I've tested, like, can I do a portrait photography or portrait shoot with a what did I have at the time? I think it was iPhone 7, and it was possible. And recording decent video on it was possible. Obviously, it's not going to be professional grade quality, but it's good to start with. It's good. I think it's all about learning to maximize the tool that you have in your hand rather than trying to get to the next thing, because the next thing is going to eventually feel like that's outdated. So unless you learn to maximize what you have, you're never necessarily going to be happy with what you get. But yeah, like if budget is aside, and let's say you have access to getting gear, then I would definitely recommend an entry level, at the very least, an entry level DSLR, because there is just something better about the reflex camera that's able to capture real data and real light rather than a cell phone sensor. So there is differences to it. But yeah, like I think if you start there, it doesn't necessarily have to be cropped or full frame. I'm not sure like how well you know the differences, but yeah, get what you can get access to, I think is what I'm trying to say. Like what you have the ability to be able to get for yourself, make that work, because you can. A film camera from a decade ago was able to do what it needed to for its time. So we're so spoiled today where we have access to everything, and like the technology is evolving so fast that we're like, oh, unless I have the next one, like I'm not going to be a good photographer. And that's not the case. I think you can shoot really good stuff even with a camera that came out 5 years ago. Like the media and the creatives back then made work what they had, and they did really good results with it. And it's funny that today we're trying to mimic retro and vintage looking film type images with what we have today. We're trying to do what they did back then. So it just shows you the loop keeps happening, So I would rather encourage you to try and work with what you've got, rather than trying to constantly like push for the next thing. And if you can get it, awesome. Like there's nothing wrong with upgrading your gear and getting the next thing that's out there. But if that's what you're putting your creative abilities, your faith into, of like how good I'm going to be, then that's the wrong stance to take towards it. Like, yeah, make it work with either with the phone, with a like, point and shoot kind of camera, whatever you have access to, make that work. It's all about lighting, and it's all about composition and the way you set things up that makes something look professional more than just a great camera. So I would say, yeah, hope that helps a bit. Your second question was about my color grading and stuff. And yeah, like, I mean, it's I don't know how long it's going to last for. It's something that like I've wanted to develop for a while, and like your style eventually evolves, and then probably like from who knows into the future will change again. But just, yeah, I think for me, I love the cinematic look. I don't know why. I feel like I'm drawn to it, and it's just something that like my eye is always drawn to and appeals to me. And that always means the color palette of like muddy greens and blues and teals and oranges, and like just the way a movie is graded. So I took a lot of my inspiration from watching, movies and paintings, and just like, it's funny, even that Stefan was talking about the Mona Lisa, like it's just looking for those older types of art and the way artists use color and light to be able to tell their story or to create imagery. So that's been my inspiration for it. So I will often look for that. And I think like there's so much digital tools out there that help you with that. Like Adobe Color is one. It's a website that lets you put a color in and gives you the triune colors around it or the complementary colors to it. And graphic designers will know the differences and what they do. But it's very cool to just put a color in, and it gives you the range of tones that work well with that color. And you can use that in your photography when you edit, because then you can look for, okay, there's purple in the shot. I actually need to find something that's going to gel with it. I need to add more reds to it as well, because that's the complementary to that. Sorry, with green, or like there's blues in it, so I need to find more yellows because that looks good. So understanding that, and why I mentioned like getting used to color theory and understanding how colors work with each other, because it really plays a big role in making a good edit and a good look for your imagery when you're crafting your look and stuff. So yeah. I'm not sure if I answered the question.
I think you did.
Yeah.
Fujifilm's new digital cameras, they have the film mimic function, so you can select the filter on the camera based on the film stocks that they used to make.
Yeah, it's amazing how it's come back. Like Visco does that. So it's just trying to mimic film again.
So we have another question from Chad.
Chad, good to see you.
Hey guys, sorry about my not muting myself earlier. I was 100%.
For those who don't know, I shot Chad's wedding as well, so that's why he's on this call. It was in the wedding contract that he had to be part of.
Part of the contract, yeah. Be hype, man. Now, look, for myself as well. Like, I'm super new to photography and video and everything, but it's purely around passion for me as well. It's something I've always wanted to do. I even spoke to Justin about it previously as well. It's something I just really feel drawn to it in terms of creative. My job doesn't allow me to be like that, and I am just generally a little bit more creative than normal. And I went out and bought my camera and got everything. It was nice. And funny enough, lockdown got me a little bit more drawn to it as well. I found myself in my yard playing around with the camera, taking pictures of random things like plants, just random things walking around. And really, it's a very expensive pictures basically, but to the point when I got down to it as well, because I'm a little bit more drawn to video. I found myself more enjoying playing around with video, and I've been playing around with DaVinci resolution, and I can sit for like hours playing around with it as well. But again, my quality of shooting is poor, but exactly what they said now, just kind of like really finding what you want to shoot and what you're looking at as well. So for me, I 100% agree with Justin. I could have done it with my phone if I'd realized. So use what you have, and then obviously over time save, but put money to the side, and you can build it slowly.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
I'm
like,
super new. I'm just playing around with it.
Yeah, but no, I'm glad you're using lockdown to do that. And I didn't mean like use your phone because that's like you don't want to spend money on gear. Like I'm glad that you did, because that means you're taking it seriously. And if you're willing to invest into something, it means you're obviously you're gonna get better at it, because you're like, I spent this money, I need to. But besides that, like I think it's really important to practice that muscle, and I'm glad that you're doing that, because like the same thing for me and every other photographer is that you only get better at it by doing it. You only get better by watching what other people do and trying to mimic that and put your own twist on it, whether that's shooting in your backyard or shooting a client's work. Like it's the same principle. Like you get better at it the more you do it, and the more you explore. So yeah, keep doing that. Like there's I don't think there's any better advice anyone can ever give you other than just do it. Like there's a million reasons to say like I'm not maybe as good, or like my style is not, I haven't developed a style yet. That's fine. Like I've been doing this for like almost 10 years now, and only now I feel like I'm hitting my sweet spot, or like the style that I wanted to, like, or what I envisioned in my head. So yeah, not to say that you're going to take 10 years to get there. I hope you take like a lot less to get there, but it's just like, just do it, man. Like do it for the self-satisfaction that you get out of it, and also knowing that this is how it's a talent and it's a passion that God's given you, and something that you should exercise because he wants you to. So yeah, good on you.
Thanks, man.
Okay, I'm going to ask you another question, probably one of my last two questions. Who's your biggest influences as a creative, and why?
That's another difficult question to answer because there's a lot. If I have to name people, it'll be difficult. But I guess if I have to, then Jeremy Snell is a photographer that definitely inspires me a lot. I don't know if you guys know him. Have a look on Instagram. Huge guy. Does a lot of like humanitarian photography, a lot of stuff for NGOs. So I guess that's why I'm kind of drawn to it because of what I do right now. And so I'm drawn to his style, but also just because he's really good at using light and using natural light and using silhouettes and dark shadows and great colors, especially because he shoots a lot of stuff in like Northern Africa type of vibe. But yeah, check his work out. He's really good at the way he's just a visual artist and the way he crafts his imagery. So he's a big influence. Another one which I'm sure we all know and is a massive name in the photography and videography world is Peter McKinnon, and that's just because his practicality and his personality, I think, is something that a lot of photographers kind of forget about, and we get so good at being able to use our camera that we forget to be likable, and he's really good at that, where he's super knowledgeable about what he does, but he knows how to hold an audience and he knows how to engage his client or his viewer. And I think that's something that I really love about the way that he does things, and something that I think we all can like draw from as well. It's just like, just be a cool person as well, like it's great that you're awesome at taking photos, but people connect to you before they connect to your art. So I think he's really good at that. And also he's just brilliant at the techniques he comes up with. And then besides him, like, I know maybe it sounds a bit cheesy or it maybe just sounds a bit weird, but I think a lot of inspiration I've drawn throughout the years is from the people I've met in the Hillsong photography team, and not even just in Hillsong, but in the creative community within Cape Town, and just the consistency and the diligence that they have in. There might have been some who showed up to serve on team that were never necessarily the best at what they did or never fully understood how to use a camera, but they were there every single week and they shot church Sundays on a services on a Sunday, and they shot team nights or they shot baptisms or whatever event was coming up, and they did their best and they got better at it. And today they're like some of the most amazing creatives. So I think some of them even in this chat right now. So I think that is very inspiring to me to see, just people that keep at it and the commitment to grow more than that their style is inspiring, because styles will change and trends will change. But I think the heart and the commitment that people show and the character that they show is something that I find inspiring. And I think a lot of those people are within the team already, if I could say it that way.
Okay, we've got a question from Andon. He's asking about comparison and how it can be a distraction.
Very good question.
How do you avoid that?
Yeah,
I mean,
that is
in my own personal experience, right? You post a picture on Instagram, you go back every 5 minutes to check
how many likes,
liked it.
And if nothing's changed, you're like, in fact, you've lost followers. Then you're like, oh my word. But that's such a good question, and something we all struggle with, myself and every creative will struggle with that in some form or another. Even the best that you see out there who seem like they have it all together probably suffer with from that as well. But I guess I think it's never going to go away. Like there's always going to be someone that's a little bit further ahead than you. So there's always going to be someone to compare yourself to. But it's really important to look at what other people do, to be inspired by it rather than to be challenged by it, or rather to feel inferior to it. And it's important that we look at like, what is it about them or their style or their imagery that you like? Write it down if you have to, or make visual boards of it if you have to, but just decide what that is, and how you want to incorporate that or how you want to mimic that. I think it's good to like create this mindset that I'm looking at this because I like it and there's something there that I like and I want to try and do that, more than just like, there's so much better, why do I even start? So try and like change your mindset towards it. And another, like, I think something maybe to add like the faith element to it is to choose to encourage the people who are ahead of you. I think we sometimes feel like they're so far ahead, or they're so untouchable, or they're so good at what they do that they don't need further encouragement. And I think a good way to take the power away from you feeling jealous or feeling inferior to that is to actually encourage someone that you feel is ahead of you. And I think it really just eliminates that altogether. And then you actually, are able to break through that, and then you're able to see their artwork, their art, and what they produce for that, rather than your perception of them as a person, because you don't know their story, you don't know what it took to get there, and you want to be aware of that beforehand, rather than just looking at something and then thinking, it's too far off. But yeah, it's real. I don't think we should beat ourselves up about comparing ourselves to other people, especially on social media. We all know that social media is people's highlight reel, and they're posting what's the best of themselves, not necessarily the challenge. So we can't always look at that, and also understand to get really real, Instagram and social media and all these photography platforms are very much a business, and are driven by algorithms, and those algorithms do not determine how good your imagery is. Just because it doesn't get likes, or just because it doesn't necessarily get the engagement that you hoped it would, is not a validation of whether you're good or not. I know it's really difficult, because you'll see some posts that are that blow up and go viral, and then you'll have something else that is equally as good, but no one saw it, and that's just unfortunately the nature of the beast and the way social media works these days. But yeah, try not to draw your sense of your sense of worth from that, or that you as an artist are either good or not based on the amount of likes you get. I know it's very tricky in the world that we live in today, but it's true. It's I've seen some of the best photographers. A friend of mine, Jeff Bergen, actually got married yesterday. He's probably one of the guys that helped me become a photographer in the first place. And he hardly posts at all, yet he works for guys like Tarren Olckers, which is a really big stock agency in the world. And yeah, he's amazing what he does, but barely posts. Hardly anyone knows who he is or what he does, yet brilliant at what he does. So that, yeah, there's creatives all over the world who don't necessarily post, and that doesn't mean that they're any less better than the guys that do post and who have a massive viral following. So yeah, it's important just to understand that, and just that our world doesn't exist around social media platforms only, and our art doesn't just exist for those things. So yeah, I hope that helps. And then yeah, but I get it. It's a very good question.
And then another question from Andan again. Andan, don't you want to just ask the question out loud?
I like to call people not talking and putting the videos on
Cool.
Zoom. And
Yeah, so I might as well ask it. Do you have any advice for a first-time photographer who's about to shoot their wedding, to shoot a wedding, not their wedding, but a wedding or shot their own wedding? Yeah.
That's a good question. Are there any, I don't know if there are any first-time wedding shooters or people who are going to get into it when lockdown's over. If they are, good on you. It's really, it's a very, very fun and challenging industry to be in. You've got to be on your toes all the time. So first, practical tip when you're starting wedding photography is get fit. You can't be unfit when you're doing it, because you do a lot of running, carry a lot of bags, your lenses are on you all the time. And you're constantly running between the bride and the groom, and yeah, so it's get fit. There's a lot that goes into it. But yeah, no, jokes aside, I think a big thing of getting into the wedding industry, or when you're starting it, as much as you can, try and shadow other photographers. And I've done this as well, where you will ask a wedding photographer who's maybe got more experience in it if you can second shoot them for free, or if you can carry the bags or whatever. If you can be there on the day just to observe what they do, because wedding photography, more than just capturing great imagery, is also being able to direct a couple and being able to ask for what you want when you want it, because the day can blow by and so many people are speaking and things can happen all the time, that you actually have to be able to direct things and rein it back in to get what you want, because you're paid to be there. You need to be able to produce the images at the end of the day. So being able to watch someone who knows how to do that, and how they encourage the couple when they're doing a couple shoot, or how they talk to the family, or so it's really important, I think, to be able to get those kind of influences. And maybe if you don't always have access to that, or you don't always know people who are willing to allow you to shadow, and that's understandable. Like it's also a couple's day, and like you'd have to get permission to be with their photographer or whatever. But I know it's not always possible, but as much as you can, like just try to shadow, try to get out there. But if you are shooting it for the first time and no one's like, well, I mean, someone's entrusted you with it, and you like you're in it, you need to do it now. It's just like have fun with it. I think you can put so much pressure on yourself that you're like, if I don't get these photos, then I'm screwed, kind of thing. And it's not necessarily the end of the world. Like it's a big day, but give it your best. That's all you honestly can do. And overshoot. Like we live in a world where we don't have to pay for film and developing. We have memory cards, and it's only 20 to 30 megs per photo if you're shooting in RAW on a card, and like memory cards are not that expensive. So especially on wedding days, and I still do this to today, I will shoot at least between 5 to 10,000 photos on a wedding day and narrow that down to like 800 that only ends up going to the client. And that's just because you want to make sure you're getting every single moment and you're covering your back in the event that when something is asked for, you've most likely got it because you shot the heck out of the wedding. So I think like it's really important to keep doing that. I know a lot of photographers will say shoot selectively, and if that works for them, amazing. They're brilliant at what they do, that they're able to nail it that quickly, but it often doesn't happen. It's not that like a great photographer walks on set, takes a great shot and walks off. Like there's a lot of back and forth and do it again, and let's try this or let's try that. So I think, like shoot a lot, like you'll get better at it, and it'll also give you the comfort to know that you've got what the couple needs on your cards, because you've taken the time to like really go for it. And that's why I say be fit, because it takes a lot to be able to shoot the whole day for like a 10 to 12 hour day, and you're doing a lot. So that's some practicalities. There's a lot that goes into weddings, but have fun with it. It's a special day, and the vibe that you set as a photographer for the couple really translates more than just the images, but it's how you are as a person and how you are to work with. That also makes it really important. It plays an important role.
And wear the right shoes.
Yeah. Don't wear shoes that are plain trainers, sneakers. Yeah. Be comfortable. Be formal but comfortable. Yeah. Sorry?
Have you ever had a situation where you were doing an event and let's say the money shot was out of focus? the shot that you needed to get was
out of focus, that's
definitely exposed.
Definitely happens. I would say it happens rarely, and that's only because of what I said before. I shoot a lot, so I will never just shoot one and assume it's okay. Even if it looks right in the viewfinder, I will always take multiple shots of that same moment, just because you want to have a backup of it. I mean, something could just get corrupt on your card, you don't even know that. So you take multiple shots. But if it does happen in instances where you fail your client, or you fail what you were supposed to happen, or supposed to capture, that happens. And I think who you are as a person and how you handle failure or problems says a lot. And people are more willing to forgive that when you openly acknowledge it and you admit that, look, really sorry, I tried to get this and I didn't, and I really apologize for that, how I can make up for that, or like, I think the humility that comes through in the way you handle those kind of situations, most often than not, gets you off the hook. I know that's not why you do it, or you're not trying to coerce anybody or manipulate in any way, but it plays a role. And I think you as a person, when you're humble and you're teachable and you're willing to admit fault, but also when you genuinely try to do your best and didn't get it, then I don't think you should feel bad for that, or be held accountable for that. But try and prevent it, and by doing that, take a lot of photos, do it multiple times if you can. But that does happen. It's normal. We're human.
I'm glad I'm not the only one. Jacques, you've got a question, and then I think we'll wrap it up.
Cool.
Hey, Justin,
Shannon, you're fine. Good, bro. Good to have you on board. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, man. Thanks. So in terms of printing and developing photos, do you have any experience in that, and as to like blowing up your images in large? Because I think most of all, we think of photography nowadays as something that gets posted on Instagram, and we forget about where it comes from. And I mean, if you're in the wedding industry, obviously you're going to print some stuff for them, but blowing stuff up in photography as in like an art form, do you have any tips and tricks on that, or experience in that?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, and I'm glad you asked, because like you say, it is actually, in the world we live in today, like it's almost like a lost art or a dying field, and it's not dying actually. Like it's actually quite thriving, and there's a lot of people who work and live within the print world. I don't have a large amount of experience in it. I do have some along the way that I've been able to like work with publishing houses or work in like, yeah, whether it's advertising and editorial things where those are either boards or their magazine covers, or whatever the print might be. I mean, in fact, we actually did one for the foundation just before lockdown. I think it was January this year. That's a billboard on the N2 right now. It's still there right now, just you won't know because no one drives there anymore. But yeah, like it's but yeah, like again, probably that's where gear plays a big part, because shooting something that's going to get blown up to that scale does need to be quite a decent megapixel amount. Yeah, probably like at least 12 to 13 megapixels and up, because yeah, you are dealing with pixels and you are dealing with something that needs to be able to be reproduced on a large scale. But also, like, I think being good with Photoshop or any editing program is really important when it comes to stuff like that, because there's actually a lot that you can cheat and get away with when it comes to print, and when it comes to like being able to scale an image. Like I've had instances where the image wasn't necessarily the greatest, or it was maybe slightly out of focus, or it was yeah, just not good enough for print or good enough for being blown up, and you actually able to just use another photo. And again, like why I say take a lot of photos, because I had another photo of the same kind, a little bit different, or moved it a little bit kind of to the left, and I took the background out of that one and cropped it into the other one, and then started masking things and painting away to make the image bigger than it actually was. And that's why it's important to shoot a lot and to get good at using an editing program, because that just helps you kind of be able to use it in a lot more like output methods, whether that's being printed on just an A4 book or a billboard. But yeah, like I don't know, I guess with printing, it's also getting good at understanding color and the differences between RGB color and CMYK and how those translate onto paper. Like I'm not sure how much of you work in those fields or work with them. But yeah, there's like so much information out there, and it's readily available to study. But I would say, yeah, like it's important just to be able to understand how color gets reproduced on paper, and be able to like just see how, because a photograph posted on a digital device looks so different when it's printed. The black point is completely different. Like the shadows look completely different when it's printed. So you also only learn that by trial and error. And if you are able to and have access to printing at home or at a store or wherever, it's really cool to actually do that in a personal capacity, so you can actually see the difference of what your image does on screen versus what it does when it's physically in front of you, because it's amazing to see the difference in tonal detail that happens there. So yeah, like definitely experiment, play around with it before you take it on as a job, or before you like do it for a client. But yeah, I hope that helps. Like definitely get good at editing with it. Trial it, like play around. And yeah, like I think anything within that area. But yeah, like my experience with it is limited. I definitely probably am more of a digital person than I am of a print one, but I love the feel and the look of print, and I think it's something that we definitely need to be investing into more, because it's, yeah, there's something about a photograph hanging on a wall, something about it being blown up on the side of a bus stop or whatever. Like that's cool. Like more people see it, and I think we should be more proactive in it and not just thinking, okay, post done, that image has been used and that's the end of it, you know. But yeah, thanks for asking. It's definitely an area of photography that we don't always think about.
No problem. Yeah, because in the beginning of lockdown, I started shooting film again.
Oh, cool.
Just to slow down the process of actually like being more aware of what I'm shooting, but also I want to develop and blow up those eventually, and printing photos as like selling them as artworks, not as just it's just an Instagram page, you know, or like another Instagram photo, adding more value to it.
That's so cool. Yeah, like the whole scanning of film. I mean, yeah, that's the cool thing. I don't know if you probably saw a little bit off topic, but like there's a documentary about the moon mission, and just like the movie that came out, the documentary about it, that was shot back then in the 80s when it was in the 80s. I'm not even sure now when it happened. but it was used today in 4K like cinematic movie that was shot so long ago, and that's just because of the technology that was able to scan film into something that's usable as a 4K movie. So that's like, it's incredible what film can still do. So it's a cool experiment with what you're doing. It can definitely get blown up to who knows what size.
Cool, thanks, man.
But yeah, I'd love to see your prints when you start them.
Definitely will show you one day. Cool.
Okay, before we wrap up, any other questions? Okay.
Thanks
Okay, cool.
for the tip.
Thanks so much, Justin, for joining us and sharing so much wisdom. I'm gonna, for anybody else who hasn't seen this conversation, I'm gonna put it on the photography group. But just to let everybody know, we are doing this in Somerset West, or actually it's just a collaboration for anybody really, every second week. But because we're not going to be having team night for the next 3 weeks, it'll be in the next 3 weeks, we'll be doing another one of these. We'll be talking to Joel Capapula. He's from our Century City location. He's a chef, creative, he's just a cool person. And we'll talk to him. Maybe we'll talk to him about food photography, culture, writing, but it's not necessarily, these conversations are not necessarily specifically focused on photography and videography. It's anybody that's creative. So if you have any suggestions of anybody you think would be cool to have a conversation with here on a Thursday night, let me know. My number's in the group. And also, I suppose if anybody has any questions for Justin, I'm sure you can ask him any of those. He's also on the group.
Most of you have my number or on Instagram, whatever. Yeah, please feel free. But yeah, thanks, Tarren. Like, I really appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for everybody that joined and was willing to listen. Like, yeah, means a lot, and I hope something was useful in some way.
I learned a lot from this conversation.
Good to hear.
Well, if you weren't watching The President, I'm sure you can get the highlights on YouTube just now.
Probably,
we all need to go.
Probably just something about. It's probably just something about don't go outside. You can't do this. You can't do that. Just be chill.
I think it's just about the school.
I think you just quoted him word for word. Just be chill.
In a nutshell, stay at home, wash your hands, sneeze in your elbow, you'll be fine.
Wear your mask.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just usually read the printout transcript afterwards, and I just skim through it. That's it.
Highlights.
Yeah.
Just inject yourself with sanitizer and you'll be fine.
Please don't do that.
Listen to the wrong advice. Don't do it.
Take a shot in the morning. Take a shot of sanitizer in the morning.
Yeah.
Good.
For the last shot you ever take. rather than get the coronavirus, you survive that. I don't think you'll survive a shot of sanitizer.
You don't want to survive that, yeah.
No.
Guess what? That's even funnier because we like photography group.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no pun intended.
No pun intended, yeah. Good one for catching that, Shannon.
Sharp. You're sharp.
Well,
Chad,
okay,
I miss
guys.
you, man.
I miss you too, bro. I miss you too. I have two guys that shot my wedding all on the same call here. So I told you I'm the hype guy. I'm the hype guy.
Listen, I just have to ask, is the editing done?
Oh, it was done. It
I hope so.
very quick. It was fantastic.
A couple of years later, we're like, is it done yet?
Did I get it yet? Am I still gonna get it?
Yeah, I'm waiting for my photos, eh? No, yeah, it was done. It was done. But yeah, they're an awesome couple. Candice is really cool.
Oh, she watched it. She will tell me about the news.
Oh, cool. You're good from the. But yeah, cool.
All right,
yeah,
guys.
thank you again.
Thanks so
Thank
much
you guys
for
for
joining
being
us. Thanks, Justin. Appreciate it.
Be safe. Have a good evening, everybody.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys. Good.
Bye.
You guys.